institution at the forefront of global business and international trade is the International Chamber of Commerce, or ICC. It represents some 45 million companies in more than 170 nations. CGTN's Karina Mitchell spoke with the ICC Secretary General, John W.H. Denton, for his take on the state of the global economy.
If you look at the ICC right now, we enable something like $17.5 trillion worth of economic activity every year. So we're not an observer, we are a player in the creation of opportunity to actually allow economic growth. So we effectively, it's our tools that enable the whole trade finance market to operate. It's the way in which we've operated in developing further Incoterms, private arbitration, certificates of origin, which add the other $7.5 trillion. So it's 25% almost of global GDP relies on the ICC's tools and instruments of what we curate. So we have a very big interest in enabling economic opportunity and activity in the world. And we fundamentally believe that making it easier to trade across borders is key to the success that we will see for businesses across the globe.
And in that vein, I'd like to sort of touch on something that you recently said. I want to quote you. You said there's been a gradual erosion of the World Trade Organization and the proliferation of unilateral and protectionist trade measures. So can you please expand upon that? And do you think the WTO needs to be reformed?
Well, look, I just put it in context. I mean, in the 1980s, before the WTO came into existence, the level of global trade as a percentage of GDP was around 30%. Right now, the level of GDP which relates to trade is 75%. So the importance of trade as a driver of GDP growth is actually critical here. And what enables that most effectively is a functioning multilateral trading system. And the point we're making actually is that political leaders, in their own way of dealing with what they see as domestic political issues, are allowing an erosion of the fundamentals of what enables the multilateral trading system to operate. And the point we want people to understand is that does not come without a cost. And what we're hoping that people will now start to realize is the accumulation of interventions. There was something like 3,000 last year in terms of barriers put up to cross-border trade, actually does have a cost to growth. And if you want the global economy to grow, and if you think about global trade comprising 75% of it, you actually need the vector of trade to grow. And we believe that enabling the multilateral trading system, enabling the rules which actually allow goods and services to cross borders to flourish is actually key. Yes, the WTO needs reform, but it doesn't need erosion, which is what's happening here.
And then, sir, following on from that, I'm wondering, the U.S. and China, the two biggest economic powerhouses in the world, how important is it for the two to find a way to come together and cooperate on economic issues, put aside some of those differences, and frankly, compete fairly as well?
Well, if you have a look at it, the US and China are the two most important economies, but they're the two most interconnected economies, if you look at it. When the US and Russia, or former Soviet Union, were in contest in the Cold War, the level of bilateral trade between the US and the Soviet Union in a good year, in the best year, was about $4.5 billion. That's what sort of takes place almost in a week between US and China. So there's a level of economic integration and economic activity which is going on anyway. And so there is actually a large amount of hyperbole about the split at the moment, because that continues right now. The interconnectedness continues. And I think one of the challenges that people are discovering now is that even though there may be calls for companies to reorient their value chains, it's actually much harder than policymakers and politicians think. And in fact, you see very clear signals with the visit of the German Chancellor this week to China about how important that integration is between Germany and China. And you see the statements from companies about how difficult it will be to unwind the value chains. So we're actually not seeing, we're seeing some, but not a lot of unwinding of value chains, because it's much harder than people think. What you're actually seeing is what's called China plus one, or a lengthening of value chains, which is going on at the moment. But as you say, the important issue is to discern here what's in the best interests of both economies moving forward. And clearly, interconnectedness is a valuable part of economic opportunity for both. The issue then is, for superiority or competitive advantage in the 21st centuries, how do we ensure that there's properly focused rules, but also effective engagement between these two very, very important countries?